Dead by Daylight, the hit PvP game wherein 4 hopeful survivors are pitted against one merciless killer. Hello, it's me, Meej, real life Sable Ward, but somehow worse. I've spent about a year trying every single available Dead by Daylight killer, and today I'm going to rank those killers in a tier list based on how fun I find them to play. The reason I actually started playing DBD is because I was informed that you could play as Leon S. Kennedy. I mean, that's all it takes. I get to be Leon, sign me right the heck up. I'm there, say less. That's actually how I started playing DBD, just with a couple friends, playing as Leon, run around the map in my little RPD outfit. But I quickly realized that the thrill of murder was too tempting to resist. So I ventured into the fog, sans teammates, to try out the role of the killer. Now, after about a year of playing, I would consider myself a killer main. I just love the variety of killers. I love trying different playstyles. I love learning different techniques. So I decided to embark on a journey to try them all. As I'm filming this, I currently have about 700 hours in Dead by Daylight, which, by the way, for this game is not a lot. It's basically like I've just taken my training wheels off. So this video is going to be a culmination of my experiences trying out every single Dead by Daylight killer and then ranking them into a tier list based on how fun I find them to play. But before we get started, I just like to reiterate that this is a fun tier list, you know, for fun. This is just my opinion, different strokes for different folks, variety is the spice of life, yada yada yada. You know that we are all allowed to have different opinions, and it's not a personal attack on you if I don't like your favorite killer. You know what fun means, right, DBD community, right? So without further ado, here are my thoughts on each killer. Trapper. Trapper? I hardly know her. I'm kidding. I know her quite well because I refuse to let her leave the basement. When I first started playing, I wasn't a fan of all the setup necessary to kind of get the ball rolling with Trapper. As a new player, things feel chaotic enough as it is. There's so much to keep track of, and losing a bunch of generators at the beginning because you're setting up just makes you panic and not play into your strengths. But now I've become more patient. I like picking an area to hold down and trying to lure survivors into that area during the chases. It's a really great feeling to have the game quickly fall into your favor if you can manage to get that snowball going. I also have Trapper in the 2v8 game mode. Placing traps amongst the chaos of 8 survivors trying to do gens is a lot of fun. My friend Mia would place traps in a condensed area and we'd call it Trap City. And then whenever someone stepped in one of those traps, we'd both yell out, "Trap City!"
Oh, Trap City!
All in all, I generally really enjoy Trapper, and I tend to return to him as kind of like a comfort / palate cleansing character. So, good times. Solid A tier. The Wraith. When I first started playing Killer, the Wraith was my character of choice. His easy to understand playstyle, combined with the fact that he moves really quickly while cloaked, made the transition from Survivor to Killer an easier one. I really don't have a lot to say about Wraith. He's fun, he's fast, and my brain doesn't have to work in overdrive in order to play him. I like the ding-ding sound his bell makes and his weird underwater breathing. Makes me feel really good about my own lung capacity, honestly. B tier for Wraith. The Hillbilly. My first Hillbilly game was a complete embarrassment. I could not figure out how to control this man. I was running into walls, I was running into rocks, I was running into the hooks, basically everything but the Survivor. I couldn't even use his chainsaw for mobility because I would just sharp turn into an object 1 second later. Now that I have a few more Billy games under my belt, I can confidently say, I'm just not clicking with this guy. I'm not sure I've ever had a good time with Billy. Not a single moment, a single glimmer of hope where I could say, oh, so this is why people like playing him. I find that I spend most of my time trying to get the insta down, because why wouldn't I? But in doing so, I draw out the chases to be much longer than if I just had one. And I understand that there's a learning curve to that, right? You have to fail a lot in order to be better. I get it. But my biggest problem with Billy is that I don't really find any fun in learning how to play him. Sadly, I have to make a whole new tier for Billy, and that is if I had the option to throw up or play one of these killers, I would still choose to play one of these killers, but it's pretty close tier, aka Z tier. Bottom of the ocean with this guy. Sorry, Billy. The Nurse. I cannot overstate how much I was not looking forward to trying the Nurse. When I first started playing Killer, I tried all the available base kit killers just to see which one I thought I would enjoy the most. When I tried Nurse, I just could not get over how slowly she moved, which is why I went with the Wraith as my early killer. Now that I've logged a lot more Nurse games, I gotta say, she's just... She's amazing. I love her. I love how fast-paced matches can be, especially if I have aura perks on that help me move from hooking someone right into another chase. Ignoring basically everything that every other killer has to consider is pretty dope. Across palettes, upstairs, downstairs, MC Escher stairs. It doesn't matter. The nurse is wherever you need her to be.
And it turns out where I needed her to be was in my heart.
The nurse is my first S+ tier character. I love her. She could tend to my wounds any day of the week. The Huntress. I was not excited about the Huntress because aiming is not exactly my forte, and that's kind of her whole thing. So I've also never been an FPS gamer, so I just kind of assumed that I would not vibe with the Huntress. I have never been so wrong. I love the Huntress. I would do anything for the Huntress. There's nothing better than sniping a survivor from a distance or pulling off a really cool shot. I love getting creative with finding new ways to hit survivors, even winning out on some mind game loops when they're not expecting me to do something a little silly. I've got to say, the Huntress has really climbed her way through the rankings. I've kept my tier list open throughout this process to kind of adjust the killer's positions as I play them, and Huntress started from kind of middle of the road to going right to the tippy top of my fun tier list. She is challenging, but so dang fun. S+ tier on the Huntress. Michael. I am the least sneaky person alive, so I did not think that I would do so well playing Michael Myers. However, he is pretty easy to understand and play right off the bat, so even though I suck at being stealthy, charging up his stock and insta-downing is a pretty simple power to grasp. Sadly, I do find that the initial enjoyment of being completely stealthy loses a bit of its luster after you engage with the survivors, since after that they're aware that you're Michael and they're looking out for you. That's probably my main gripe with Michael. Once you take away that scary aspect, I'm essentially just building stock by chasing survivors and trying to down them once I hit tier 3. Which is whatever. Overall, I find Michael just kind of meh. He got old pretty fast for me, and I just don't find his gameplay super engaging. D tier. The Hag. The Hag. What a journey I've had with the Hag. This killer started out at the bottom of my tier list, bottom of the barrel. She felt slow, and I didn't understand what the heck to do with her traps. She was similar to the Trapper in that I felt like the game would slip away from me before it was really even starting. Then something clicked. Once I learned to set up in a condensed area and be patient, the Hag's gameplay became spectacularly fun. I had to shift my thinking from being a chase killer to a defensive killer, dropping a chase that was too long, or if the survivor wasn't heading to my web, being aware of the closest gens to nudge the game into a 3-gen situation, planning for chases with my traps before they actually happen. The fun with the Hag starts when the game starts to get really chaotic and survivors are activating your traps left, right, and center. I love bouncing around hit and run style to hit a bunch of survivors.
I just go where the traps take me.
The Hag went from someone I would literally push in front of a bus to being my girl. Don't you come for her? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear the Hag hate. I love her. She's everything to me. S tier. The Doctor. I like playing the Doctor about as much as I like facing the Doctor. Not at all. I really don't know how to describe my dislike for the Doctor other than I just don't like his power. Shocking survivors and chase is boring, and though the static blast is useful for finding survivors, I just don't think it adds enough to the playstyle to make it interesting for me. That's it. I just find it boring. Not a fan. D tier. Bubba.
I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Bubba.
I like looping around the survivors and trying to time when to continue my chainsaw. When you can get those hit to work just right, it's a dang good time.
But when I can't get it to work, it is extremely frustrating. I've come across plenty of survivors in the fog who seem to have a PhD in looping Bubba. And in those moments, missing all of those chainsaw sweeps can be a little annoying. When I love him, I love him. When I hate him, I hate him. So call it even, C tier.
Freddy. Freddy was recently reworked, and now his power has both the snares and the pallets, as well as a few other quality of life changes. Pre-rework, I would have thrown Freddy into an oil pipe in the bottom of the ocean on this tier list, because I just thought he was so boring to play. Before the rework, I did have some good times with Pallet Freddy, but for the most part, it was just kind of whatever. But thanks to his new rework, he's still pretty boring. Don't get me wrong, I do find him more fun to play now, but only marginally. Shooting at the snares instead of having them stay stationary is more engaging for me. I just like the action a lot more than the old snares. Pallets can be fun too, but I feel they rupture pretty slowly, and I can't really do the same mind games with them as with the old pallets. Teleporting power was and still is useful to help move across the map, so he's got that going for him. But overall, I just find him kind of ugh. For me, Freddy is better than where he was before, but at the end of the day, I'm just not the biggest fan of his power. C tier. The Pig. Overall, I find Pig just fine. The trap mechanic's cool when I can get a head pop, especially unexpectedly, but rushing and sneaking aren't always things I get to utilize since they're often situation dependent, so pretty much I'm just running around M1ing people. Because of that, I don't find her the most engaging to play. She's okay. C tier. The Clown. In the beginning, the Clown was a killer that my feelings were all over the place with. I'd watch someone play a clown game and I'd be like, yes, all right. That looks so fun. But then I would play a clown game, and the only clowning happening was me getting clowned on by the survivors. Now my feelings towards the clown have done a complete 180. This man can shut down loops like nobody's business. I have pee and grape juice bottles, and I'm not afraid to use them.
The one thing I will say about the clown is that I get a lot of salt for playing him.
Seriously, people really seem to hate the clown more than anyone else. I generally try to play really fairly, try to have a good, honest game, but I will never get so much salt as when I play the clown. Out of all the killers, I've just noticed it the most with clown, so that's fun. A tier, the spirit. I was worried about playing the spirit because I didn't think I'd be very good at listening to the survivors and being able to follow them with just sound. But learning how to identify where the survivors are using only scratch marks and sound has actually been a ton of fun. It's oddly satisfying to be phase walking along and not expect to run into a survivor, only to realize one is nearby because you heard them. I still mess up and get disoriented all the time, but I think playing spirit has actually helped me play other killers better since I've gotten better to just listening where survivors are in general. Spirit is a perfect example of a killer that I find really hard to play, but still have a ton of fun playing. S tier. The Legion. Right. The Legion. I love the frenzy speed of the Legion, but their whole power just feels really tedious. I don't know, Legion just seems like killing, but with extra steps.
It's not even that I dislike a hit and run style. I mean, you heard what I had to say about my girl, the Hag.
But for some reason, Legion just doesn't do it for me. When survivors know how to space themselves out well, I run into my power before I can reach all of them, and essentially just drop the power to chase one normally. At that point, I'm just an angsty Canadian teenager running around with a knife. And if I wanted to be an angsty Canadian teenager running around with a knife, I'd go outside.
I'm not a teenager.
The only reason that the Legion doesn't drop to the bottom of the tier list is because they were pretty fun to play in 2v8. Chaining up to 8 hits in 2v8 as the Legion, I mean, that was pretty cool. Not a huge fan, but fun in certain situations. C tier. The Plague. My issue with the Plague is that she's really gross. I don't even have a problem with vomit or hearing vomit or seeing vomit or even smelling vomit, but I'm lukewarm on the vomit motif at best. Sadly, the whole vomit thing kind of puts me off the Plague in general. D tier. Ghostface. When it comes to the stealth killers, Ghostface is my favorite. Having individual stock meters on survivors is preferable to me than having one shared one. Plus, I like the mechanic of being able to be taken in and out of stock if they look at me for too long. I also love crouching around the map and admiring Leons from afar. I will say that I feel like it would be harder to be a sneaky snake Ghostface against experienced survivors since they won't be so unobservant. But for me and my baby MMR, I've had great success at being a creepy little guy. Generally, I enjoy Ghostface. B tier. The Demogorgon. The Demogorgon's a fun little guy. I enjoy the use of the portals and the massive distance you can cover with a shred. Shredding pellets is a nice little addition as well. I feel like he's a really good balance of map mobility while still being fun to use in a chase. The one thing that drives me absolutely bonkers about the Demogorgon is how freaking loud his scream is. It's too loud. I can't play too many demo games in a row because that blood-curdling scream just makes all the friggin' neurons in my brain fire off in the worst way possible. I hate it. I hate it. Super pun power, love the portals, love the shreds, just please comment with a scream. E tier. The Oni. The Oni is so freaking fun. I love all the aspects of his kit, from collecting the blood orbs, from being able to rush and instant down a survivor. Awesome. The massive thump you get when you smash a survivor with your bat is really satisfying. I'm still not very skilled with the flick hits you can do when you're rushing in his power, but it sure is fun to try. Running across the map and downing a survivor right away, or catching someone with your power in a tight spot is so freaking satisfying. The Oni is another killer that I'm objectively bad at playing, but I still just have fun trying. A tier. The Deathslinger. Like the Huntress, I thought I would enjoy the Deathslinger just because of how necessary it is to aim well in order to play him effectively. However, despite my complete lack of ability while playing this killer, I find him so fun. Missing every shot doesn't even really frustrate me because when I finally land a hit and reel that survivor in, I'm awash in a wave of euphoria with all my past failures forgotten. When I do manage a cool hit, I would like to imagine that even the survivors are like, "Ah, sick shot, bro." I still lack the confidence of a truly skilled player, but I'm loving him. A tier. Pyramid Head. I really enjoy Pyramid Head's M2. It's tons of fun to hit survivors from across pallets and behind walls. It's incredibly satisfying to basically guess where a survivor is when I can't see them and hit them anyway. And it's borderline euphoric downing more than one survivor at once. I love insta-caging survivors, especially for flashlight save squads who won't be able to get that save. Plus that little swing noise as you slash your big sword on a survivor to cast Final Judgment. Ooh! That's good. Love his power. A tier. The Blight. Blight was one of the killers I tried earlier on in my killer journey, and I had zero experience with rushing type killers. And it showed. I was bouncing off walls into nothing, and when I would find a survivor, I would go way past them and then eventually just lose them altogether. It was hilariously bad, but at this point, I've played many more Blight games, and I do think he's a lot of fun. I've gotten better at aiming myself while rushing, taking a bit of a pause and adjusting properly, as well as not being so fussed about saving my rushes. Like if I need to travel across the map, just use them for the map mobility. Even though I'm far from what I would consider being a skilled Blight player, I do enjoy Blight matches. Plus, I get to look like William Birkin. Coolest skin in the game. Prove me wrong. Blight's pretty dope. A tier. The twins. I'm not gonna lie, I wanted to hate the twins. And I do. No, I'm just kidding. I don't. Using Victor to run around the map is actually so fun. You move so fast and can pounce on or down a survivor really, really quickly. Switching back to Charlotte and being able to hit someone else while Victor is occupied can cause some crazy pressure, and the ensuing chaos can be off the charts. One thing I'm not a fan of is moving back into Charlotte and having to walk for 3 hours to reach the survivor I downed with Victor. Obviously, I'd rather down someone closer and pick them up right away than have to have a visa to travel across the map. But that is the nature of the twins. It just makes me feel a little bad for the survivor sometimes, even though I try not to leave them on the ground for too long. I will say, I hate looking at and hearing the twins. Specifically Victor.
I just hate the weird little noises that leave his body when he's scurrying across the map like an intestinal tumbleweed.
A tier. The Trickster. Another day, another killer I'm bad at aiming with. I found my early Trickster matches were really me just trying to remember to actually throw my knives instead of just running around doing M1s while listening to this man breathe in Korean. At first, I found Trickster to be kind of lame compared to Huntress and Slinger. His knife throws just didn't have the same weighty feel that a Huntress hatchet or a Slinger shot did, and the fact that you have to hit so many to get an injury turned me off of him. But as I've learned, time can change opinions. I started to get a better feel of when to hold on to my knives instead of just whipping them all out as soon as I saw a survivor, and playing around loops this way became a lot more satisfying. Downing someone with main event after getting the first injury with the knives is just the cherry on top. I still don't enjoy the Trickster as much as I enjoy the Huntress or the Deathslinger, but generally I do have a good time with him, so B tier. Nemesis. Nemesis was the first non-base killer I tried to play, and I found him very confusing. I really didn't understand his power or how to use the whip to my advantage, and hearing the groans of the zombies brought me Resident Evil PTSD. Once I got used to the tentacle whip mechanic, Nemesis just became the goodest of good times. Breaking apart pallets and walls with the tentacle is by far my favorite way to break things in this game, and hitting a survivor from afar with the whip is amazing. Also, just straight up using my fist as a weapon and punching the survivors is really cool. He just feels like such a beefy boy to use, and I love him. Honestly, the Nemesis is such a comfy character to me. If I ever have a bad DBD game, there are certain characters I like to jump back to just to feel a little more whole again, and the Nemesis is one of them.
I find I seldom have a boring Nemesis game.
Because of that, he is S tier. The Cenobite. Cenobite is tough, but fun. Aiming the change is a challenge to learn, but it's pretty satisfying once you start to get the hang of it. I find the chase with Pinhead really engaging since it's a toss-up if I'll actually chain the survivor, and even if I do, a good survivor could still avoid me anyway. It gets you into some fun situations that play out a bit differently than the standard looping that typically happens. I also like the box mechanic, though I rarely find the box, and I'm pretty sure I've passed it without noticing. In my case, the box just ended up being more of a survivor thing, and just something I'm happy to pick up if I stumble upon it. I wouldn't say I want to spend all of eternity suffering with the Cenobite, but I do like him. B tier. The Artist. The Artist is kind of a deceptive killer. She seems easy to play. Sending out the crows to swarm and find survivors far away is a pretty straightforward thing for even beginners, but she becomes more complicated and interesting as you learn to place crows around loops and anticipate survivor movement. It's not always easy to time it correctly, but if you do, it is a lot of fun. She's one of those killers that seemed easy to me in the beginning, but is becoming more and more intricate the more I play her. All in all, I think the Artist is a good time. A tier. The Onyro. The Onyro is an interesting killer to me. She has a lot of mechanics that allow her to have good mobility, and even the ability to mori someone without having any hook states is really unique. But I find I often lose out on these parts for a kid if the survivors are actually doing their objective. Then again, I'm not great at leaning into giving survivors condemned as much as possible, but even when I try, I usually just end up hooking people normally. I typically use the TBs as a mobility aid first and a way to apply condemned second. I find the Onyro just okay. Not spectacularly fun, not super boring. C tier. The Dredge. For me, the Dredge is probably one of the most fun killers to play mind games with in loops. Leaving your remnant and going back and forth with the survivor to see who can outplay whom I just love it. Being able to teleport all across the map as the Dredge is really helpful, especially during nightfall when you move at max speed. And the moments when I'm going to a locker only to find a poor, unsuspecting survivor already inside of it, peak DBD. Also, the Dredge is the only killer I've ever had a full lobby of Leons with, so that just kind of shoots him up way in my heart. Love the Dredge, A tier. Wesker. I fear that, as with many other rush type killers, I would find Wesker hard to control, but among those type of high movement killers, I think he's actually one of the easier ones to get the hang of. I've had tons of fun slamming my Ouroboros into survivors and getting them down with the sickness. Wesker was also an absolute blast in the most recent iteration of 2v8. 3 bounds made him feel unstoppable, and paired with another killer, he could make some amazing plays. Plus, as a Resident Evil fan, I have to love Wesker. I just have to. Not as much as Leon, of course, but you know, love Wesker, just a fun guy, A tier. The Knight. Uh-oh, a killer that has more than one thing I have to remember how to do? Disastrous. My execution with the Knight is pretty sloppy. I often just run my guard around in a nonsensical path and waste my time by mistake, though I have gotten better at knowing which guards to send out and when. I'm kind of 50-50 on the Knight's power. I think it's fun having a bunch of little guys to send out, and when they actually do something helpful, it makes my life a lot easier. It is admittedly pretty cool to be in a totally different area of the map and to hear that somehow my guard has downed someone a million miles away. On the other hand, I feel almost like I'm playing passively when I'm playing the Knight. That's not to say that it doesn't take skill to play the Knight, especially really well, but personally, I just kind of feel less engaged overall when I'm playing the Knight. Don't love him, D tier. The Skull Merchant. I can say with confidence that I think the Skull Merchant is just boring. As a survivor, I actually like the little drone minigame, but as the killer, I'm just kind of like, what am I doing with this? I don't really understand how checking the monitor works, and I've never been able to find survivors using it. I understand how it's supposed to work in theory, since I've seen it in action from survivors who are purposefully hanging out in my drones, but in actual gameplay, I've rarely found them helpful. I just throw my drones out and hope they manage to injure someone. Spoiler alert, they seldom do. From what I understand in watching Skull Merchant guides, she used to be more of a trap killer, which is right up my alley since I love a good trap killer. Just ask my bestie, the Hag. But her recent nerf kind of negated this playstyle, and now I'm honestly just confused what to do with the drones. I basically just throw them out mostly for the undetectable and then proceed as if I'm a normal M1 killer, which I guess I kind of am. To be fair, I did play Skull Merchant before the rework, and I didn't really like her then either, so maybe I just don't like the Skull Merchant. D tier. The Singularity. I find Singularity gameplay a little disorienting. Being fairly new to the game, I'm not especially familiar with the maps to begin with, so having to know all this map knowledge in order to play Singularity can be a little difficult. Watching a good Singularity is amazing. I love seeing Singularity gameplay, and it's crazy what it can do in the right hands. But it's like watching someone make a beautiful pastry. It seems so effortless and flawless when they do it, but then when you try to do it, your little uncoordinated squirrel hands just mess everything up, and you're just left with a disaster. However, and I know this contradicts everything I just said, but out of all the killers, I feel like there's the most room to grow with the Singularity in terms of how much I enjoy playing it. I have a feeling that if I maybe devoted some time to the Singularity and allowed a little more room for things to click, then maybe I would really enjoy him.
Ooh, guess who friggin' knows herself and called it? This girl. When I originally made this tier list, Singularity was kind of around D tier, but since then I've become a lot more familiar with the maps, a lot more comfortable with the cameras, and because of that, he has shot up the tier list. I can say that now he's probably comfortably in the A tier.
The Xenomorph. I really wanted to love the Xenomorph, but I just don't. I'm typically a big fan of killers that can traverse the map, but something about the tunnels just doesn't do it for me. I also just hate dealing with the turrets in general. I find it just breaks the flow of the gameplay and kind of disrupts the enjoyment.
I hate to say it, but I just don't like Xeno's power, so.
D tier. Chucky. I have a very complicated history with Chucky. I hated Chucky because I just hate him. The voice lines in particular were what got on my nerves.
And because of that, I just never wanted to play him because I didn't want to look at his stupid little face.
But then I decided to give behavior more money to fix my problems. I basically bought the Tiffany skin, and that made playing Chucky a lot more bearable. Now that I've been able to experience Chucky for the killer that he is, instead of just the crappy little doll he represents, he is a lot more fun. After purchasing the Tiffany skin, my enjoyment of Chucky went way up. He climbed several tiers in the tier list just because I found him suddenly tolerable. Then he went from tolerable to, oh, I'm actually having a really good time. Going under the palettes can also be very satisfying, and overall, I just really enjoy the power. A tier, the Unknown. The Unknown has some really interesting powers that I enjoyed right off the bat. Teleporting instantly is amazing, and spinning my goop over people is a really fun way to counter loops, made even better when you can hit a really cool shot. Add the fact that it's legitimately creepy, and you've just got yourself a good time killer. I'm still not very skilled with the Unknown, but learning how to play it is fun, and I feel like there's a lot of room to grow. Love it. A tier, Vecna. Vecna is exactly the kind of killer that I should find overwhelming, but somehow every aspect of his kit, it's just right for me. Timing the mage hand and the flight of the damn skeletons during loops is awesome, and being able to fly makes map traversal a breeze. I also really enjoy the way Vecna interacts with survivors. Unlocking chests and getting items and it giving the survivors special abilities is a nice little added touch, especially the hand and the eye items. I find him fast-paced with a good combination of map mobility and anti-loop power.
The one negative thing that I will say about Vecna is that his waist is a lot more snatched than mine. Not cool.
Absolutely adore Vecna. S tier. Dracula. Dracula's kind of weird for me. I love him in theory, but in practice, I just kind of find him gimmicky. I get that he's really strong because he can travel across the map quickly as bats, hunt down survivors as the wolf, and use hellfire to cut survivors off in his main form. I love everything about his voice lines and his appearance, but there's just something holding me back from really enjoying him.
Not to say he's not fun, but I can only play so many Dracula games in a row before I'm ready to switch on to another killer.
B tier. The Houndmaster. The Houndmaster is so fun. I love this killer. She was a little funky when she came out, but right now I feel like she's in such a good place. Using Snug took some getting used to, but once you can angle him right, mind gaming survivors in loops is a lot of fun. When she came out, a lot of people were saying she was like the Deathslinger, but I think she actually has more going on. She has better map mobility since you can speed yourself up using Snug's sniff trail. You can reorient Snug after you initially throw him out, and I find he's more forgiving when it comes to actually grabbing onto survivors than with shooting a shot with a slinger. Especially when going over a pallet, sometimes you can move around the pallet while holding onto the survivor as the slinger, but if it's a god pallet or the survivor breaks the chain, you won't get that hit. But you definitely have enough time to break a pallet and get the hit with the Houndmaster if Snug's holding onto the survivor on the other side. I do really enjoy her. A tier. The Ghoul. So as I'm filming this, The Ghoul came out last week. So I've not had a lot of time to play him. I'm going to give my initial thoughts here in this recording, but if those thoughts change, I'm going to do a super awesome flawless transition into a future mage who has a more informed opinion to give you. Was that cool? Where to begin with the Ghoul? First of all, this guy has wild map mobility. Add to that you can also jump over pallets, vault over windows, and put the survivors into deep wound, and you've got yourself a pretty strong killer. And a pretty annoying one too. A lot of survivors not having a good time going against the Ghoul. I do see where they're coming from though. There's a lot to keep track of if you're running against him. Honestly, you can't outrun him in a lot of situations. From the killer perspective, I think he's just fine. When it comes to killers that bounce around the map, like the Blight and the Ghoul, I still prefer the Blight. I just feel a little more awkward using the Ghoul. That could just be a skill issue. That's on me. Fair enough. But hey, I've got skill issues with a lot of other killers that I enjoy, so what's up, Ghoul? What are you doing? Power aside, I think that he is really cool, and I love the fact that we have an anime killer in Dead by Daylight. So in terms of the Ghoul actually being in the game, 10 out of 10, love it, big fan of it, just, I don't know, not the biggest fan of his power. It's just okay. Slap him right into B tier. Springtrap. So evidently, it takes me so long to edit videos that not one, but two new killers have entered the fog. Anyway, we've got a whole new killer that I've got to talk about, so strap on and strap in. To be honest, I wasn't super hyped about getting Springtrap in Dead by Daylight. What I was excited for was the fact that this collaboration is so huge that it was likely to bring an influx of new players to Dead by Daylight. But now that I'm sitting on the other end of it, probably a month after Springtrap's release, I gotta say, whoa. They nailed this killer. I freaking love him. Initially, I was kind of thinking, if I want to play an axe throwing character, why wouldn't I just play the Huntress?
Behavior shut me up real quick, let me tell you that. If you've played Springtrap and you've played Huntress, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The trajectory of these axes and hatchets are completely different. The Huntress just kind of whips out her hatchet, it goes straight. You can do orbitals, but for the most part, you are aiming in front of you. Springtrap's axe throws do not go as far as the Huntress's, but you can curve them upward so that they can go over obstacles and walls. It is different, there is a different learning curve, and because of that, it does feel like a refreshing playstyle and not like you're playing a Huntress knockoff. Of course, Springtrap has the added benefit of map mobility through the security doors, which I think is such a fun addition. As a survivor, I friggin' love these doors. I love walking through them. I love the jump scares and getting spooked. It's a good time. As the killer, getting undetectable when you exit the door is fantastic. I think it fits the character and it's a ton of fun. The added benefit of grabbing the axe when it's embedded in a survivor instead of just downing them with a normal M1 is a really nice little detail. Honestly, I just feel like they cooked with this killer. Chef's kiss, he's up there, S tier. All right, back to past Meej. I don't know.
So that's it. That's all the killers ranked based on how fun I find to play them. Obviously, time can change opinions. Maybe someday I'll try a build on a killer that I hadn't previously enjoyed and then find myself having a great time. Conversely, maybe someday a killer I really love will become stale to me and not as fun, and I want to switch it up with killers I don't play as much. Things can change. This video is sponsored by me and my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Meejin, MEEJIIN. I do play DBD on there pretty frequently, so if you ever want to come by and yell at me for giving the wrong opinion on how fun a killer is, then stop on by. But that's going to do it from me today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!
Looking at you, you friggin' freak.